Well, we'll just start this out. You know, when people hear about Al Bielek, the name Preston Nichols certainly comes up over and over and over, and so that's why we felt it was important to invite Preston to say a few words about his experience with Al and some of his knowledge that he has with the Philadelphia experiment to help gain credibility to some of the things that Al has said. And also we can sort of lead into the MONTAUK project. So, Preston, first of all, I'd like to first thank you for agreeing to participate with us today.
Okay.
Good. Could you, I guess let's just start out with...
Just ask questions.
Okay. Let's start out with... let's go from the beginning. What year were you born?
I was born in 1946.
In Long Island, or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I guess normal high school.
High school was normal. College was normal.
Was your? Where did you go to college?
I went to a number of schools. I went to Stony Brook for psychology, which I never finished.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went to Suffolk County Community College for technician training. And then I went to Polytechnic Institute of Brooklyn for engineering. And I finished up at the University of Tampa.
How many degrees did you wind up with?
Well, let's see. And I also have a doctorate in parapsychology from Long Island University.
Parapsychology, that's not a common course curriculum.
No, I'm the one and only.
Yeah.
From that school, because they were going to have a program in parapsychology, but it never went off.
Okay. So you were one of the few doctorates then from that program. And what year did you graduate from college?
Well, let's see. I graduated Suffering Community in '69.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, '67. I graduated from the University of Tampa in 1980. I graduated from Long Island LIU, in 1977, I believe it was.
Okay, so you've had quite an interest in, I guess, expanding your education curriculum. Now, I would have always thought that you would have had a technical background, like in electrical engineering or something like that.
Yeah, well, that's what my degree from the University of Tampa is.
Okay.
Electrical engineering.
Okay, so you have sort of a mix then between psychology.
I have a S degree in electrical tech, a BS in electrical engineering, and a PhD in metaphysics and parapsychology.
Wow. Now, in high school, what sort of interest did you have there? Was it
science?
Pretty much science?
Yeah.
And from our conversations we had previously, you said you were in the Boy Scouts?
Mm-hmm.
And
I started at 8 and finished up at around 25 as a explorer advisor.
Wow.
Went up to Eagle Scout.
Okay. Yeah, so did I.
And I always looked at that, and today I look at that as training for the government service.
The Boy Scouts?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was in it for many years. I can see your point, but it's interesting that the Boy Scouts, as we talked about before, is sort of in decline right now. So, okay, after you graduated with these degrees, what professional field did you go into?
Electronics. Went in analog electronics, defense electronics mainly.
Mm-hmm. What companies did you work with?
Well, I actually started as a maintenance technician at Suffolk Community College, maintaining all their audio, video, and theater equipment. And from there, I went to Brookhaven National Laboratories, and then from there, I went to AIL division of Cutler Hammer. Today, it's a division of Eaton. Actually, today, it's an independent.
Mm-hmm. So that's all. You sort of stayed around the Long Island area, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. Brookhaven, that's a pretty impressive place to work.
That's how I got out to Montauk, was through Brookhaven.
Ah, so that was your one mistake, right? Who knows?
It's hard to tell.
Yeah. When did I guess all of this start for you? And when I say all of this, my guess would be the Montauk Project.
Well, that's government service. That started in '68.
Okay.
When I went to work at Brookhaven National Labs as basically a college student, although I was a staff member at that point of the college.
Mm-hmm.
But I did take a job because it was more than I was making at the college.
Sure.
You know, it was one of those glow-in-the-dark jobs. In '68, you get paid $22 an hour. That's a lot.
That is, even today.
1968, so
Wow.
I said, well, when do I start?
Yeah. So what did you do at Brookhaven?
I was in human factors at the tail end of the stealth research, where we had to make the Philadelphia experiment technology user-friendly.
In '68?
Mm-hmm.
So you must have been under some secret oath at that time? Was that secret work that you did?
Yes and no. I never got involved in anything secret per se. Because Brookhaven Lab was an open forum, supposedly.
Right. Did you have to sign anything that said you wouldn't divulge your work?
No, because I never gotten anything that was considered defense-oriented. I guess you could say I ended up like a super psychologist, or a technical psychologist.
I'm trying to link the technical stuff that you did with the stealth technology to the psychology. Where did the psychology come in?
Well, as Al has probably told you, the stealth technology that was developed in the 40s, up through the late 40s, very early 50s, sure, it worked. It worked very effectively, but had a tendency to make people sick in many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to make it so that a human being could exist in the field. You know, the EM field is being generated.
Right.
And we had to figure out how to, massage the field, how to change the field so the human beings, it would be more synchronous with the human system, and also how to shield it and pull it to the edge of the field instead of being a uniform field. We wanted it to be a peripheral boundary field.
Mm-hmm.
And the part I was in was pure research, which means there was really no secret, it was all called confidential at that point.
Right. So you worked, I guess, at the chalkboard with the mathematical formulas to that degree?
I was more into building equipment and interfacing with the guys that did the formulas and the chalkboard.
Oh, so you would make their theories into reality then?
I've always been an applications engineer.
Okay, that helps.
But they were more interested in my knowledge of the human being and the technical applications of human engineering.
Would you say
in high school, believe it or not, I was sort of a pioneer in that.
In high school?
Mm-hmm.
In what sense? Tell us more.
Well, in high school, I had developed equipment which I was able to get a partial decoding of the optical system of a human being.
Oh, hey, could you? I ask you, could you please speak up a little? It's really coming over weak.
Well, I'm speaking as loud as I can.
Okay.
I do have voice problems.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Something to do with allergies here on Long Island.
No, they're bad here in Atlanta too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you did something very unique in high school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I got noticed for, and I guess that's why I was accepted at Brookhaven and never saw a nuclear reactor or any of that sort of thing. I never saw anything radioactive, and that's supposedly what we were all hired for.
Where did this interest, this psychology interest, come from?
Beats me. I don't know.
So
I was going to be a psychiatrist with a electronics hobby. Now I've become a professional electronics person with a psychology hobby, I guess.
Wow. Yeah, just in my experience, it's rare to meet someone who has skills in both areas.
Yes, it is rare. That's probably why I found my way out to Montauk eventually.
Right. Or did it find its way to you?
You can look at it either way.
Okay.
That's why I got pulled into the Premier Mind Sciences project.
Well, let's explore a little bit how you got pulled into that Premier Mind Sciences project. Was it a voluntary thing? Did they?
In the beginning, it was.
Oh.
Because I was told that we were working on interfacing a person's mind to a computer.
Mm-hmm.
So that you could think and the computer would pick up what you're thinking, literally a mind-reading device. And, the opposite end where a person could pick up signals from a computer directly. This was all being aimed at aircraft operation.
Oh, so that they could fly an aircraft without, I guess, with as little interaction with the pilot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they were.
The idea was this was most likely applications of stuff they noted in alien spacecraft, where the alien creatures actually interfaced mentally with the systems on the ship and ran the ship's systems, the avionics system, purely mentally.
Right.
There was no switches. There was no human interface, so to speak. No mechanical human interface with a direct connection. And this is the ideal way to fly an airplane because the mechanical human interfaces are notoriously slow.
Yeah.
And you get tapped directly into the processing centers of the brain and get rid of reaction time and all that stuff.
But wouldn't you think it requires a certain degree of evolution within the human to achieve this?
They didn't think so.
What do you think?
I don't think so.
You just think the right technology needs to be developed then?
Mm-hmm.
So when you worked in Brookhaven, were you successful with these the development of stealth technologies?
Well, as I said on that, I was at the tail end of it.
Okay.
And yes, the technologies were developed, and they've been used all along now.
So give me an idea. Are you saying that they could make an airplane today disappear?
Mm-hmm. We have total optical, complete physical invisibility.
How about a human being?
Yes.
How about
I know they do because I chase guys with the man packs. You could hear them. You
Really?
could see them move branches, but you couldn't see them, optically.
You chase them?
Yeah, I chase them around my yard.
So they come pay you a visit every now and then?
They were for a while.
Huh. Wow, that's interesting. Could they make a ship disappear now?
Sure.
So basically anything?
Anything you can make a field big enough to encompass.
Huh. That's quite fascinating. I know there's been several reports of people seeing airplanes or hearing airplanes, but not seeing them.
True.
This happens quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's get back to Montauk. Did you go from Brookhaven to Montauk?
Basically.
Okay. And
that's when it went from my regular life to my hidden life.
Tell us how that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us how that happened.
As far as I could figure, it had something to do with this time manipulation number they pulled, where you'd work for a day and then they literally reverse you back through that day and you start over again.
Mm-hmm.
And memory is key to many things, including what reality you're in. And since I could not exist in two different places at the same time, the first pass became essentially an alternate reality. And the memories get tied to it. This was part of the program that appeared in the mid-'60s, where instead of swearing to people of secrecy when you left the job,
mm-hmm.
they had procedures and technologies that could make you forget what you did. And you'd have a false memory implanted for what you believe you did for the day, although you did something very secret. You just don't remember it.
So when you worked at Montauk, you worked under this alternative reality.
That's the way I look at it.
Okay.
Although, if you went into AIL, Deer Park, and Melville, and Farmingdale, you would have seen me sitting there doing my job, mostly designing my own stuff on the company computer, because they didn't have enough work to keep me busy.
Right.
And if you drove out to Montauk Point, got on the base, you would have seen me sitting there working on the transmitter, working on the mind reading equipment and that sort of stuff.
At the same time?
At the same time. Although technically, for me, the first pass, which would be the Montauk work, is an alternate reality.
Mm-hmm. Which was difficult to remember.
Yeah.
And so many years obviously went by where you were working two jobs for the price of one.
I know.
Right? Huh.
And then when I bridged the reality gap with some of my own research here, building a Delta T antenna, which at that time I was building a triaxial Delta loop receiving antenna.
Okay.
Because I had tremendous E-field static interference here from the power lines. I wanted to be able to listen to VLF and ELF.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I worked on this loop antenna that I realized, hey, at Montauk we called this thing a Delta T antenna because it actually is capable of generating time fields. And that's what I was playing with here, although at the time I put the thing together, I didn't realize it.
So when you were in your alternative reality in Montauk, were you also building the same equipment? Or working on the same Delta T?
No, the Delta T antenna here, I built that around 1985.
Okay.
After I supposedly left Montauk.
Okay. And is that what helped you regain your memories?
Yeah. That seemed to be the thing that broke the dam.
I see.
And bits and pieces started to flow in.
So how many years do you think you actually worked at Montauk then?
Well, when I was in the Air Force Reserve and actually was activated to protect me from the county government, I found out I was credited with 15 years of service at Montauk
15?
in the Air Force.
Wow, 15 years.
Yeah, 15 years I was credited with.
You were actually credited with that?
Mm-hmm. There is in existence a service book for me, although it's held in secret vaults.
Okay.
You know, it's not general access.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was sworn back in the Air Force, they had it there. They had my service book, and they didn't let me read parts of it. But they let me read some of it, you know, at least the first bunch of pages that gives a general service record.
Wow. So 15 years. At least they did give you some credit then. That's unusual.
Yeah, but the way it's set up, I won't be able to get a pension out of it.
No?
Although that might change.
That was going to be my next question there. Yeah, are you receiving a pension for all those years of service? You
Not
say
at this point, because it's not official.
You say it may change, however.
Yeah, I may be able to go through court and get that record brought to the public sector. You know, the public sector military, so that then I can collect on it.
Wow.
If I decide to use the the veteran system.
Right.
Right now, I'm not officially listed as a veteran.
Hmm. Well, and I'm sure there are many, many, many others who have gone through the same thing.
Most likely.
Who are still not listed as well, but put in all those years of alternative service.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. So during these 15 years, something came up that you recalled later on about the Philadelphia experiment.
Yep.
Tell us how you first learned about that project.
Well, of course, the first thing I learned about it was when I was a little kid and I saw a TV show on it and I got the William Moore book. I read that.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I went to work at AIL, they sat me at my desk and put a bound report in front of me and said, you got to read this and study it. That turned out to be the final report for the Rainbow Project, the Philadelphia experiment.
Okay, so you didn't request it. They just put it in front of you.
They handed it to me and told me, become familiar with this.
Right. And
this is what you're going to be working on.
And what do you recall was in that document? How did they describe the experiment?
Well, they described it as an attempt at radar invisibility It was described as using big coils, pulse generators, a UHF radio transmitter, HF radio transmitters, in order to generate the electromagnetic bottle, which would transverse the radar waves so they wouldn't reflect. They would go around the bottle, come off 180 degrees opposite of where it originally hit, and continue on. It was putting the ship in a bubble, so to speak, isolating it electromagnetically in a bubble.
Did they name the ship?
Yeah, it was the Eldridge.
Did they name any of the people involved in the experiment?
Well, they named the Cameron brothers, Dr. John Van Neumann, and I said to my boss, I thought John Van Neumann died in 1957. He says, no, he's still alive. It was and it named a whole bunch of people that the names escape me at this point.
What did it say to your memory recollection about the Cameron brothers?
It said that the Cameron brothers were both commanders. You know, they had a rank of commander, and they were the interface from the Navy to the civilian people from Princeton. You know, from the Institute of Advanced Sciences or whatever it was called at that point.
Did it say anything about them jumping off the ship and landing in 1983?
No, it didn't.
Okay. Just the basics, huh?
Just that the ship appeared to disappear for 20 minutes, and when it came back, bizarre things such as people being embedded in the bulkhead had resulted. There were people wandering the decks, not sure where they were, when it was. And all it said is there was all sorts of wild stories being told by the people that were involved. And the idea I got is the validity of a lot of these wild stories the writer of the report wasn't even commenting on. He was commenting on what they saw in 1943.
I see. Do you recall who the writer of the report was?
Vilcanova, some name like that.
Nofanova.
Yeah, some name like that.
Okay.
Vilcanova, some name like that.
Yeah, unfamiliar with that name.
Harold, I think, was the first name. Harold Vilcanova, something like that. There was also a medical report, which I didn't understand half of what I read. According to the medical report, there was all sorts of bizarre things taking place, and there was talk of having to stabilize the people in our dimension and stuff like that in the medical report. Half of the report was medical.
Wow. Well, Preston, was there anything in there about alien implants found in the...
No, there wasn't.
Nothing like that? Because there's some discussion about that right now.
There probably is.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be surprising.
Right. Okay, so it's pretty much... it was a report, matter of fact, and it said strange things were said by the sailors when they returned.
Right.
Now, did you find that...
And the sailors had some strange medical maladies.
Such as...
They talked of tissue damage. They talked of... how the hell was it put? Something to the effect. I asked the company doctor what he thought it meant, and he thought it sounded like parts of the body were not properly aligned or in phase with the quantum reality. Was the idea I could get from what the doctor said. He really didn't know what it meant. He was taking guesses, and I was taking guesses. But there was talk of building equipment that they would carry with them that would keep them dimensionally stable so they wouldn't fade out, disappear, and then come back. It was talking about these people would be translocated, being they would fade out in one spot and appear in another spot.
Wow.
As the medical report said, the medical damage to the human beings involved at that time was considered extremely bizarre. Extremely bizarre.
Did many of the sailors die shortly afterwards?
A lot of them died. There were only about 6 or 8 survivors.
Huh. After all the, you mean through the years, right?
Yeah.
So you say most of them died fairly rapidly.
Yeah, most of them died within a year.
Wow.
There's only 6 or 8 people that went beyond a year, and most of them were inside the ship. You know, and somewhat shielded from the fields.
Right, that being Alan Duncan, right?
Yeah, they were some of them.
Yeah, the thing I always found interesting is that they had to go, to jump over the ship, they had to actually go from the inside to the outside. So for a while they were exposed.
They were exposed, sure.
Yeah.
They weren't exposed, apparently, for that long.
Yeah.
And the report talked of people missing.
Oh, you mean when the ship reappeared?
Yeah.
There were people that just weren't even there.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Do you recall about how many people were on the ship?
About 30-something.
Total?
Yeah, well, it was a small group.
Okay. So did you find this data useful for you as you progressed through your studies?
Well, what I was more interested in was the schematics of what they had built.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the diagrams and schematics.
And
the logistics of it and the medical aspects of it, I wasn't that interested in. That's why I don't remember a hell of a lot of that.
Right. Right.
I was more interested in what they built.
So
that's what I was told to concentrate on.
Sure, sure. So seeing what they built, were you able to refine it and do a better job, miniaturize it? Is that what your job was? The equipment?
Probably at Montauk in Brookhaven.
Mm-hmm.
Was that. Not at AIL.
Oh, sure.
I never understood why they gave me that report there.
Oh, they gave you the report at AIL?
Yes. I'm beginning to realize that my service at AIL was more or less supplementing what I did at Montauk. I think instead of having me take time at Montauk to review the report, they had me review the report in my regular job at AIL.
Very interesting.
And also I was involved in reverse engineering a lot of foreign technology is what we were told it was, but it was stuff that wasn't made here on this planet.
Sort of extraterrestrial in origin?
Mm-hmm. It was called, pieces of foreign technology.
Well, give us an example of what some of those pieces were.
That I signed on.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Ah. Okay, so you can't get into that, huh?
No, I really can't get into the foreign technology.
Okay, well, let's skip that part then. Just interesting to know, that's all. When did you first meet Al Bielek?
As Al Bielek?
As Al Bielek.
1983, United States Psychotronics Conference.
Now, okay, we'll mark that one day. Now, when did you first meet him as Al Bielek in your alternative reality?
Oh, about 71.
And that was at Montauk, right?
That was at Montauk.
Do you have just vague memories of him there, or what are your memories like?
Well, we did quite a bit of interfacing on the psychic aspects of the Montauk Chair and the Montauk Boys project.
Mm-hmm.
He and I did not get involved in electronics, so to speak.
Both on the psychological...
Yeah, it was a psychic end.
Right. And he was one of the psychics, right?
He was, I guess you could say, he was a psychic manager.
Huh.
A person that managed the project from the psychic side.
Mm-hmm.
He did have an important job there. Although I don't know if he was the power supply guy that he talks of. Well, I know we did interface on the psychic work, because I did some psychic work there also. You know, from the training of the psychics, I was involved in training the Montauk boys to make them into Psi soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Psi warriors.
And that Psi being PSI, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So would you say you and him both ran training sessions?
I didn't. He was involved in the management of it.
Okay. Okay, we're back with Preston Nichols to continue our discussion about Al Bielek and the Montauk Project. Okay, where were we?
I don't remember.
I think we were at your experience or your role with Al Bielek.
Right.
And
that's right.
That's where we were. We're talking.
Yeah, we're talking about the Montauk boys and.
Right, but specifically, let's focus on what did you do with Al Bielek? You said you interfaced with him in a teaching mode to some degree.
Well, we had two highly psychic things that I was involved with.
Okay.
The Montauk chair, which was the input network to the big mind amplifier, was essentially a device that used subtle quantum fields to read a person's thoughts. And he was involved from the psychic end of how, to get the Montauk chair to work. Then the Montauk chair, that was a big lounge chair that a psychic would be put in. He would be entranced, and his whole mind would concentrate on one thing. And then we had a group of coils and sensors that would pick the emanations up and put it through a bank of radio receivers, very sophisticated, old-style radio receivers designed by none other than Nikola Tesla, reportedly. And from there, digitized and put into a computer, and the computer decoded essentially as channelized wideband information what the person was thinking about.
So what you're saying is turning thought into reality.
Turning thought into code, basically.
Into code?
Turning thought into computer code.
Huh.
Then, of course, from there, it went through other computers and then into big old radar transmitters, and then turning thought into reality at that point.
So was it through this chair that people could travel to other planets and other places?
Well, the chair would be used to pick up the frequency transform that would be used to open the vortex. And people would actually enter the vortex once it was opened.
So
you didn't go through the chair to other places. Although a adept such as Duncan Cameron could lay in the chair, and he could go to other places psychically, mentally, and the chair had the capability of displaying what he was seeing. When he traveled to other places in space and time. But also it was used to pick up the frequencies for the vortex function. It went into the particle accelerator and the delta T antenna to form the time vortex.
Wow, so this is fascinating. So let's just say Duncan's sitting there on the chair, and he does his thing. It opens up a vortex. When that vortex was open, would other people sort of step through it and go to another place? Is that how it worked?
Yep.
So it was, I guess, the person in the chair who was in there, it was extremely important that they were the right person, that they had the right skills, right?
Oh, sure. Well, once the vortex was open, it could be recorded, and then the computer would just adjust for the time on this end as time progressed. That's how they held the vortex open.
Wow. This computer sounds like something that most of us don't have access to. And this is a long time ago, and that must be much more powerful than anything we have today.
Yeah, it was a Cray 1 or a Cray 2.
Okay.
It was like 8 different Cray 1s or Cray 2s that were all like parallel processing.
And wow.
And even by today, it still would be a mini mainframe computer.
Yeah.
Although back then, it filled many, many rooms.
Yeah, the Cray did. Now this people.
And there was 8 of them in use.
Wow. So this was back in '71, right?
Yeah.
And of course, if you look at Montauk, all you see from the pictures that we have on the CD is just a bunch of old buildings. You would say there's no way you could fit all those Crays in there, but I think you're saying that the Montauk base was underground.
Yes. It had 6 levels underground at that time. And the bottom 2 levels were huge. We rode around in golf carts in the bottom 2 levels.
would you say how many say gymnasiums, high school gymnasiums size would it be?
Well, golf carts ran about 30 miles an hour,
Mm-hmm.
and the run from one end to the other end of the main corridor took about 15 minutes. So you're looking at miles here.
Yeah.
5, 7 miles, I would guess.
How in the world do you make something like that?
A lot of digging.
Yes, I would say so. People say, I think this was originally an Army Corps of Engineer project back in the 20s, in the 40s.
The underground was originally built in the 40s. It was updated and enlarged in the early 50s. And then 2 more levels were added in the late 80s.
So there was
now it's an 8-level underground.
8 levels. Wow. So were the levels below the 6?
Mm-hmm.
So they must have had some fairly sophisticated equipment to do that.
I never saw it, but they must have.
Oh, yeah.
Every so often, that big door on the end of Montauk Point would open up, and this huge rectangular boulder would come down with a big, loud thud.
Mm.
I've seen, friends of mine have seen it happen very early in the morning and at night.
Have you ever seen it?
No, I've never seen it. I've seen the boulders. You look at a lot of these boulders that were appearing in the late 80s, you wonder where the hell they come from.
Right.
They looked almost too big to be trucked in.
Maybe they were shipped in.
Well, when I saw the boulders appear off of Montauk Point as part of the Lighthouse Reconstruction Project, I made an effort for about 2 months asking around to the locals, had anyone ever seen those boulders coming in on a truck or a barge? No. None of the fishermen had seen any barges, and none of the townspeople felt any trucks go by.
And they just appeared.
They just appeared. And then I found some town people that told me, I was sitting at the point by the lighthouse, and the ground rumbled, this door slid open, and this giant rectangular rock came out of the hole in the end of the cliff, and that fell on the beach with a giant thud.
So are these boulders rectangular?
Mm-hmm.
At Montauk, at the lighthouse?
They were until they cut them up.
Ah.
Until they broke them up. When you go out there, you can still see the flat surfaces on some of the rocks.
They do have a flat surface.
Oh yeah, nice flat surface.
Ah, that's interesting.
Like you cut it with a diamond saw.
Yeah, very interesting.
Very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and just all sorts of images come to my mind. So getting back to this chair, how many different people actually operated it? I'd call Duncan an operator.
I think there was 5 or 6 main people, and they had many different people in it off and on. I wasn't involved with that, so I never knew the logistics of that.
But you actually saw it, though.
Oh, yeah. I saw the chair. I was involved in building the chair and designing it.
Okay, but not operating it.
Yeah, I was involved in operating it, but it was from a supervisory. I got called when they had troubles.
Okay.
When it didn't do something they wanted to do, I got called in.
So for maintenance or something, right?
More for modifications.
Okay.
We had a very large maintenance crew out there.
How many people would you say were in this facility while you were working there?
300, 200.
It's amazing. So there are probably people at AIL that you worked with that were doing the same thing you were doing.
Probably.
Huh.
I would say probably a third of the company was involved in the same way.
Wow. Now, I've heard, I guess reading around, that a lot of these Montauk boys got sent through this vortex that you're talking about and never returned. Could you elaborate?
The Montauk boys, but they would basically send people through the vortex.
Okay, so like Duncan would create a vortex. They'd send a boy through.
They'd send a guy through.
Okay.
Usually with cameras.
They
were lucky if he got back in the beginning.
Wow, what was the problem?
Stability of the vortex.
And so was that something you worked on to make that vortex more stable?
We all worked on that.
Mm-hmm. So how many people do you think were lost?
I don't have the foggiest, but a lot.
You think it was a lot?
I would say over 100.
Wow. And
But actually, I don't know.
Sure, it's just a guess.
Mm-hmm.
And here's another guess. I'm going to ask you, where do you think those people are right now?
Who knows?
Wow.
Maybe out in space? I don't know.
Well, they wouldn't last too long there.
No, they wouldn't.
So you think they just died?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so eventually you got to the point where you were able to stabilize the vortex.
Yes, we did. I didn't think so until I recalled my own time travel experiences.
Let's get into that. Where did you go?
Well, from the 70s, I went into 1995 and was involved in fighting a forest fire, supposedly. It was a forest fire, but the fire was a cover for the crash of a 100-foot giant sphere, a crystalline sphere that crashed in the Pine Barrens here. I was part of a team where guys were brought in from different times to make up this recovery team.
Was that New York?
Mm-hmm. And the local news channel got footage of us. Through that footage, I recognized someone else that I know, and then that fellow and his friends recognized me.
Wow.
And it was, hey, Dad, come over here. Look at that. Who's that? He says, oh, that's you from about 25 years ago.
Wow. So I would imagine that the recovery was successful?
Yeah, sure it was.
It was, what was this thing? It was a crystal?
Crystalline, spherical, some sort of spacecraft.
Okay.
That went down in the Pine Barrens with a giant thud, about 100 foot in diameter.
And why was it necessary to take you from 71 or whatever to 95?
I don't know. I don't know what that logistics was.
Someone decided to do that.
Yep.
And then send you back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you done any other time traveling?
Well, from the future to here I have.
Ah.
But I don't recall anything else I did through the MONTAUK system. I recall telling him I don't ever want to do that again. That was the scariest thing I'd ever done. Go through that double light cone portion that was made out there.
What did it make you sick, or?
Well, you'd be compressed to nothing.
Yeah.
You didn't exist, and then you'd be expanded back again.
What do you feel when that happens?
Feels like you're dying.
Ah. Is it painful?
It was, but it was very fast, the actual painful part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like a flash of pain.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it was the most scary thing I ever went through.
Like the most immense pain, just for a second, can be a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
So, wow. So it wasn't something you wanted to make a career out of?
No.
So do you recall anything about that vessel that you retrieved? Anything more than you did it?
Well, let's not go into that on this.
Okay, that's fine. You just tell me where to stop.
Hmm?
Well, you just tell me where to stop, and we'll stop at that point. Okay. Well, where next?
I don't
know. Did you ever come in any contact with extraterrestrials while you were at Montauk?
Yeah, sure.
You say that as a matter-of-fact, casual thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which types were there?
About a 7-foot-tall reptilian creature, and the grays. 5-foot grays and 3.5-foot grays.
Was this a 7-foot-tall reptilian creature? Was he the Draco that Al talks about?
Yes.
And how would you characterize him?
I wouldn't even attempt that.
Because
I had very little to do with that creature, because that creature called me a Pleiad dog. Weren't very friendly.
Did he seem to run the show?
Not that I could observe. I thought he was there as an observer of some sort.
Mm-hmm. But he didn't like you very much, huh?
No.
From what I understand, he didn't like too many people.
I think he loathed and despised me.
Wow.
He called me a Pleiad dog, which I now realize is a Pleiadian dog, which is their arch enemy.
Ah. Well, Al says that, he actually conversed with him, and they sort of got to a level of respect for each other.
That I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting side issue there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the grays, now there's two types, right? The tall and the shorts.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you say the function of the tall grays were?
Workers of some sort.
Oh, the tall ones were workers?
Yeah.
Because I've always understood the short ones were workers.
Both.
They're both workers.
They both were workers there.
And do you have any recall as to what their capacity was?
No, I don't.
Okay. You just saw them.
I just saw them.
It seems like, Preston, that everything was very compartmentalized.
Very.
I mean,
in fact, you had to literally fight to get any information on anything.
Mm-hmm.
I spent hours in the security office trying to justify that I should learn some other data. That I needed other data.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was extremely compartmentalized.
So you were on a need-to-know basis, right?
Very need to know.
Mm-hmm. So someone could come up with a story that they worked at Montauk, and you would have never even known them, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
So
very possibly.
Yeah.
It was a big crew.
As time goes on, I mean, you're right in the middle of this whole thing. Have you had a lot of people coming up to you and saying, I worked there too?
Mm-hmm. I used to run into people at what we call Hamfest.
Okay.
Which is amateur radio conventions and flea markets, that would come up to me and say, "Do you remember me?" I look at it and say, "I remember you. Well, we worked together on the Montauk Air Force Base." It was, oh?
Yeah?
And then my cousin married a guy who claimed that I was his boss at the Montauk Air Force Base. He was in the Air Force. And the whole family thought that guy was nuts. But now I do remember him.
Wow.
He did work for me.
How about that?
But I didn't know it at the time.
So what happened with him? I guess his programming didn't work correctly.
Well,
sounds like a lot of people.
My cousin divorced him after a lot of years, and the family says he's somewhere around probably being as screwy as ever.
Yeah, that's going to be the
family says that he was definitely a screwball.
Huh.
And I would always say to my aunt, well, that's the Montauk Project.
Yeah.
He worked at the Montauk Project.
Gosh, about how many people all these years have come up to you and said, I remember you, or...
About 20 or 30.
20 or 30?
Yeah.
Oh, that really leads a lot of credibility to this story.
And then when I started to remember two memory lines, that was real strange.
I would say it's very confusing. So
it made me doubt my sanity.
It would have to, yeah.
Although the only thing that kept me anchored was recollections of the number of people that came up to me and said that they remembered me from the Montauk base. That's the only thing that kept my sanity at all, or else I would have been I would have volunteered to go to a rubber room after that.
Huh. So all
of a sudden recall you did two things for the same time period. That's, what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
Which one is false? So it turns out they're both accurate. They're both correct.
Wow.
Do 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 do.
Well, it's a great way for cheap labor,
Yes, I know.
And it must have just physically worn you out.
Yes.
So, I mean, you'd be working two jobs. I mean, it's still the same you.
Well, instead of being 54 years of age, I'm probably more like 64 years of age in actuality.
But were you physically tired that whole time period of 15 years?
Oh, yeah.
Run down?
No, I wouldn't say I was run down. I used to sleep out there. I'd go out there, work for 2 or 3 days a clip, and I had a room in the barracks to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I did get enough rest.
Okay. You're just...
I think traveling through the time device that they used on me to run me back a day, 2 days, 3 days, I think that was very fatiguing, that device. I remember walking out of that room almost sick to my stomach.
Each time?
Yeah, each time.
Yeah. That would be my guess.
That, if anything, would tire me out.
So, what was the purpose of this Montauk Boys project, to your recollection?
It was a continuation of something called Monarch Project.
Monarch.
Which is, the basic idea is to take a young lad and basically split his mind, generate a split personality. Bury one side, have the other side be dominant, but on command, flip the personalities and make a secret, hidden soldier.
So, I guess in 1 hour he could be your best friend, the next hour he's stabbing you in your back, and he doesn't know the difference, right? So on command he could turn just like that, and would one side know what the other side is doing?
Not most of the time. The memory is compartmentalized depending upon which personality it is. So it was basically generating multiple personality disorder and then using it.
So they would have some trigger, some mechanism that would actually invoke that other personality, right?
Yep.
So would they implant commands, or how did they do that?
It varied.
Varied. So I would imagine
everything from commands to pieces of music. One guy, you'd grab him and choke him, and he'd flip. Stuff like that. There was many different triggers.
So did the techniques over your 15 years become more and more refined?
Yeah, they did.
Right. Because Al says...
It started out with literally beating the boy out of body and then putting the mind on a supercomputer and then using psychosexual means to reinsert the mind to basically evolving into a teleportation device where they had 2 buffers of mind and a physical buffer, and they would teleport them but just store them in the buffer and then put the mind patterns into the computer and then put it back and reintegrate.
Now that was a mouthful right there. You're saying, see if I got you right, that they could actually pull the mind, almost make I'm thinking of a computer. I have a file on a diskette. And
one would be for the physical body and one would be for the non-physical mind.
Yeah, so they would sort of take that file off the diskette, do what they wanted to do, and then place it back onto the diskette, and that file
then reintegrate the body.
Was their mind. That is amazing.
That's what it evolved to. And I still, to this day, don't know what kind of a computer they use for that. Because I don't think we even have a computer today capable of holding a human consciousness. But this machine had it.
No.
Al always thought it was an alien computer. All I know was a cryogenic computer. It was the door that went into the room that had the computer, and I never saw the door open and have a sign for cryogenics on it.
Yeah. Well, wasn't this computer ultimately destroyed by that monster?
No, it wasn't. I don't know what happened to the computer. I would assume that they removed it afterwards. But the Montauk Boys Project was moved out of Montauk around 1980.
Okay. Do you know where it got moved to?
It was moved to Rocky Point.
Rocky Point, where?
On Long Island.
Oh, on Long Island. Okay.
There was like a satellite Montauk project at Rocky Point in 1980 up to present day, I think. I'm not sure.
Uh-huh. Now, there's a lot of discussion that it's really not in just one location. It's in many, many, many locations right now.
Yes, this is true.
Hmm.
It was all over the world.
That means there's a lot of mind control slaves out there.
Yes, there is.
And they don't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Well, the Air Force figures there's a 5 million man army out there.
Ready on command.
Ready on command.
And
they don't have the foggiest idea who controls them.
The Air Force says this?
Mm-hmm. That's what they told me. But in secret, the military is very concerned about the secret army. So maybe the military is going to fight them, and they don't know how many in the military are part of it, too.
Mm-hmm.
How many in the reserves are part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's unknown.
Well, someone knows.
If I say it's unknown in the governmental levels.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but somebody knows, right? Now, have you ever gone beyond 1995? You said your future self
Mm-hmm.
came and... Did he pay you a visit?
Yeah, a couple of times.
And were you careful not to touch each other?
No.
You touched each other?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't blink out of existence?
No.
And what did you look like? What did your future self look like?
Thinner, more gray hair, older.
And you touched him?
Mm-hmm.
And nothing happened?
Mm-hmm.
Shake hands? What'd you do?
Mm-hmm.
Hugged each other?
No, we didn't hug.
I would have fallen on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
I would have fallen on the floor, and he would have had to pick me up.
No, I didn't fall on the floor.
Wow. Why did your future self come to see you? Can you talk about that?
Basically, I guess to influence me to do certain things so that certain things go in certain ways in the future. I was actually taken into the future and shown certain things, which I'm best not talking about. I know you're going to next ask me, well, what do I know about the future? And I'll say,
You're
I
quick
know
there.
a lot, but I'm not going to say anything.
Would you say that's a probable future then?
Well, as long as I'm involved in a time loop, for me, it's not probable. It's fixed.
It's fixed for you. Now, that's important.
For me, it's fixed. Other things can vary that don't affect me.
Mm-hmm.
But anything that affects me, it's fixed.
So, well, now, the fact that I've talked to you, does that mean I'm linked to your future?
I don't know for sure. It's possible.
It's just a guess. But you're pretty sure that your future is fixed. So,
Mine is, yeah.
So what about Al Bielek's then? Because he's been to, 2137 and the 28th century. Are those futures fixed for him as well?
Sure. Once you're part of a time loop, your future becomes fixed.
And how many time loops are there out there?
God knows, I don't.
Infinite, right?
Probably not infinite, but damn close to it.
Yeah. Yeah, see, it's hard for the average person to grasp this, but, you have, parallel universes. That discussion comes up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
How many parallel universes are there? And if you go back in time, are you just creating a splinter in the timeline? So what really happened, but now you created something new.
Mm-hmm.
And any ideas?
Well, when you do something like that, you create alternate timelines.
Right. So is that a real thing in your mind? Now, it's interesting. You don't want to talk about the future. I'm not going to ask you about that, but is it because by doing so, does that make things worse?
I don't know. It's just that basically, I I don't believe in talking that much about the future because I don't want to have that much influence on what happens. Although I know for a fact I'm influencing what happens drastically.
So it's almost, you're saying, in a sense, we're creating our future, though.
Oh, yeah.
And by, let's just say it's something bad that happens, whatever it could be.
Not necessarily.
Well, if it was good, you'd want to influence it even more. But let's just...
Good. I wouldn't want to influence it to where it goes bad.
Yeah, right. But let's just say, 20 years from now, something bad. Are you saying by talking about it and getting other people to buy into it, then it becomes more of a reality for them as well, and that's what you're trying to avoid?
Sure it does.
Okay, so in a sense, you're still saying we're creating our future.
To quite an extent, yes.
Mm-hmm. It's very confusing, Preston.
No, it isn't.
Well, for you, it's not. You lived it. Yeah, you lived it. Wow. Now, apparently there was an incident back in '83 when everything went to hell at Montauk. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's when Duncan brought in this Sasquatch or Bigfoot or whatever. Mm-hmm. Were you on the base at that time?
Yes, I was.
You were there?
Yes, I was there. I saw the thing.
You saw it. What do you look like?
Look like a 9-foot Sasquatch.
Just your average run-of-the-mill 9-foot Sasquatch. Mm-hmm. And what did he do?
Tore things apart. Destroyed things. Mm-hmm. Took bites out of buildings, literally. Bites
out of buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he was.
If you get my videos, you'll see bite marks on some of the buildings.
Yeah, actually, now might be a good time. We'll get into that. You have several books that you've written. Mm-hmm. Tell me, what are the names of those books?
That's the Montauk Project, Experiments in Time.
Okay.
Montauk Project, Adventures in Synchronicity. Mm-hmm. Montauk Project, Pyramids of Montauk. I wrote a book called Encounter in the Pleiades, which is my UFO book.
Okay.
And the new one is The Music of Time, which is my recollections of when I was in the music business, reporting rock and roll of the 60s and the very early 70s.
And you said you knew the Beatles at that time.
Yes, I knew the Beatles. I knew the Beatles, I knew the Rolling Stones, I knew the Doors, I knew the Turtles, I knew the Animals.
Was this an alternative reality for you, though?
No, this was in real time.
Real time. Wow.
It was a job I had.
Yeah, and from what I understand, you were quite well-known, renowned for your skill in audio equipment. Mm-hmm. This is during the 60s, right?
Yes.
Wow. So you knew all the big guys.
Yeah, I knew the big guys.
Wow. And you said you have a video for sale, too, right?
Yes, I have 2 videos. Montauk Tour, which is a tour of the base. Mm-hmm. And I have Montauk Tour number 2, which is a review of radio songs. I show the Tesla receivers. I show the national radio receiver that came from John von Neumann, which is based on the Tesla design. That there's some time legends about that set. So, and I show Al's house, where he and his friend Pete had some sort of solitonic electromagnetic field that you step about 2 foot outside of the house, the signal disappeared. And then I show oscilloscope traces of the HARP signal. And then I show oscilloscope and spectrum displays of the blips and blurps and bleeps at Montauk in the early 90s.
Wow. And if people are interested in this tape, how do they get a hold of it?
You can order it right through Sky Books.
Through Sky Books. Do they have a website?
Yeah, I think it's Sky Books at Yahoo.
Okay.
But if you do a search on Sky Books, you'll find it.
I'll tell you what I'll do for you is on this CD, I'll put a hyperlink
Mm-hmm.
to Skybooks. So people listening to this, go back to your CD. You'll see the page
Right.
that hyperlinks you so that you can get all of Preston Nichols' information and order the books.
That's one of the reasons I do these interviews, is to help push the book.
Sure. It helps everybody out
Mm-hmm.
by doing these things. And again, we really appreciate it. What am I missing here in this story?
I don't know.
How about when you first met Al in 1983? Is that when you said you met him as in this reality?
Yeah.
Which is strange. 83, that's when he supposedly landed in Montauk, 1983.
That was as Ed Cameron.
Right.
I met him as Al Bielek,
Okay.
About 17 years younger than he is today.
And where was this show held?
I believe it was in Portland, Oregon.
All the way out there?
Yeah.
Wow. And weren't you with Duncan at the time?
No, this was before I met Duncan.
Okay.
2 years later, in Ohio, Duncan and I came out. He and I built a big Tesla coil at the Psychotronics conference.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Al first met Duncan in this timeline.
And what was what was it like when they met each other?
Well, when they first met, they hit it right off. They gravitated to each other.
Mm-hmm.
They got along very well. Then, as the years progressed, there became some sort of friction between Duncan and Al from Duncan's end. And Duncan kept reading that Al is a physical relative of his. And at that time, he didn't like Al at all.
And when you said reading, you're talking about intuitively reading.
Yeah, psychic reading.
Psychic reading, okay. He
First
didn't like
we were
Al.
trying to figure, was Al an uncle? It finally came up that Al was Duncan's half-brother.
So how
and
did...
Duncan found that real nauseating,
Wow.
which means that adds more validity to Duncan's read, because that's the last thing he wanted to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And then we came up with Al's involvement in the Philadelphia experiment.
Mm-hmm.
First, Duncan came up with his involvement.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, my brother Ed was also involved. And we decided not to tell Al until he recalled it himself. And as Al himself says, he called me up one day and said, Preston, I was involved in the Philadelphia experiment. And I said back to him, yes, I know, Al. We've known this for the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
But we wanted you to remember it.
And
I fed him little bits and pieces to make him look at this.
Mm-hmm.
So he would recall it.
How did it go with Duncan from liking Al in the beginning to disliking him?
I don't know for sure. I think subconsciously Duncan looked at Al as almost like a relative that abused him. And it may relate back to the work that Al and Duncan did at Montauk, which was history at that time.
Sure was, yeah.
And, Al may have had Duncan doing things that were not too pleasant for him, and he tied Al to that, to unpleasant times.
And he probably remembered all that. Does Duncan remember a lot of what happened at Montauk?
He remembers more than he likes to say.
Okay. He just wants to let the past be the past.
Yeah.
Which I can understand. Wow. So, if you're sitting back and let's just say somebody off the street listens to this, what's the message in all this for these people?
I don't know.
Is there a message?
Message is that there's a lot more going on out there. Hang on a sec.
Mm-hmm.
How much time is left on the tape?
For me?
Okay. 19. It means at 8:20 I'll have to go turn off my tape machine.
Oh, are you taping this?
No.
Okay.
Actually, about 10 minutes.
Okay.
So either you'll have to wait probably a few minutes until I get in to stop the tape machines. I'm making copies of the MONTAUK tour tapes right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta go eventually shut the machines off. How much more do you want to talk of?
Well, I think we're almost at the end. Unless there's something that I'm missing. I mean, I didn't experience it. I'm trying to piece it all together. And we're just really getting into, is there really any message for anybody here? And certainly that would be hard to answer, but...
Well, the message would be that there's a lot more going on out there than anyone thinks. And keep your ear to the ground and, dig into things. That's the only way we stay free.
So...
But this whole project was basically to deprive us of our freedom. That was one of the goals of this work.
Would you say...
The message is to keep digging into things and keep the government honest.
Would you say they succeeded?
To an extent.
Mm-hmm.
We're not as free as we were today as we were back, 20 years ago. We've lost a lot of our freedoms.
I think most people would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So your message is keep digging, don't believe the first thing you see or hear.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, this is going to, startle a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay, I think.
That's the only way we'll stay free.
Right.
Is for the public to question the government.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm very happy to see that the public in general is questioning the government.
More and more.
More and more.
But not enough, in my own mind.
I think there's only a handful of people today that trust the government.
And those are the ones in it.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the ones who are in the government.
Not even them.
Yeah. Okay.
Can
Well,
you tilt that light there? That's good. Huh?
Preston, I think we got what we needed to get out of this interview. I appreciate it.
Okay.
It's going to help out, and good luck. And I certainly encourage everyone to go visit Preston's website area and get some of his books.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye-bye.